Thanks, Fad. So, there we go.
Yes.
Excellent. Look, we even got the technology to work. Brilliant.
So, about DevOps. Why? Why this specific topic?
Because you asked me to do it?
That's one.
Do you mean a real reason?
But we had other choices.
We did.
Yes. But why? Why this one?
Because Agile didn't work, did it? So now we have to do DevOps. And then DevOps won't work, and then we'll do Lean Startup, and then Lean Startup won't work, and then we'll do something that's not been invented yet. So the bottom line is that hopefully in the next hour, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why that's sort of not the right question. DevOps, Agile, Scrum, XP, what we really should be concentrating as we deal with some very tricky issues in the world today. It's funny, Fad said, you know, I'm the product owner, I'm the best product owner who's ever. I feel the worst product owner. Because every day, every 2 weeks, I sit down with Ken Schwaber, the creator of Scrum, and say, oh, Ken, you know, we're doing all this stuff. And he basically takes me back and says, why are we doing that? Why are we trying to do these things? And I'm like, well, because we want to train more people, because we want to teach more things, because we want to help people in, building better architectures, whatever thing it is. And he always says, but why are we doing that, Dave? And he reminds me continuously about the vision. And what he worries about mostly isn't actually Scrum adoption. He worries about the world. He has the opportunity now, because I do all the day-to-day work, he has the opportunity to think about the future. And we're in a really exciting time. I'm going to talk a little bit about that and then put that in the context of this Scrum with DevOps kind of idea. So firstly, I've got to apologize. I don't speak German. And the reason why it's an apology is I had the opportunity at 11 to pick a language, an elective language in school in England. And I picked French. Primarily because I thought, it's the language of love. It'll help me pick. At 11, that's all I was thinking about. And it didn't help at all, which is kind of worrying, really. So I wish I'd picked German. My best friend, David, another David, who did German, became incredibly successful, moved to Germany, then moved to Russia, and now lives in Asia. I think he might be a spy, but that's another story. So he's obviously more successful than I, so anyway. So first thing I just want to highlight, there is no such thing as Scrum Ops. We're not inventing a new combined Scrum with DevOps and creating this brand new thing, no new certifications, no new assessments, no new training classes, that would be ridiculous. And I'll hopefully share why that is ridiculous. But our industry does have a bit of a propensity, a desire, when in doubt, invent something new. That's basically how I used to write code as well, which sometimes wasn't always the best thing because new code always goes horribly wrong, doesn't it? So the point of inventing new things is I don't think we should do that. I think we should take stock of where we're at and hopefully build a better sort of combined set of ideas. But before we do that, let's talk about who Scrum.org is. So Scrum.org's mission isn't Scrum. It's to improve the profession of software delivery. I like to think of it more as improving the profession. What Fad said, I think, in German, because I've learned, because I've been here immersed for a few days, I think he talked about the importance of professionalism. He referenced Kent Beck, who's maniacal about professionalism. He believes that ultimately we will be better if we become more professional, and he thinks that is XP and some other things. But I believe that we have a responsibility today. So I am fortunate enough to drive a Tesla. I have a Model X. Primarily because it's like an iPad on wheels, and as a software engineer, I love the fact that I'm in the beta program, though I'm a little worried sometimes I'm in the beta program, particularly when I'm trying to stop. But I always think, I hope they haven't downloaded a new braking thing. But anyway, but But the thing that's so interesting about that is just what I said. Software now is everywhere, right? It's rampant. And if we don't deliver it in an effective way, we could kill people. Or we could pollute the atmosphere. No Volkswagen thing, don't worry. Or we could close down my grandma's banking system, TSB in the UK. Or we could stop planes from moving. There was 2,000 flights were cancelled last week in the US because of a computer glitch. Actually, interestingly, a computer glitch in a subsystem miles away from the actual organization. They'd bought this company. It was a scheduling integration. It just overscheduled and wrecked everything, and it was a computer glitch. Professionalism is incredibly important, not just because we want to be more professional, but because of our impact on society, because of our impact on the world that we live in, which is important. So a few words about scrum.org. There's a couple of things I want to, so this is out of date, so not 240. There's about 225, 30 professional Scrum trainers, of which Fad is one of them. And all of them have very strong opinions, as you can imagine, which is always fun as a product owner to work with. But there's some interesting things that we're seeing. So a little bit over 7 million people come to the scrum.org website every year. Probably, conservatively, about 15 million people do Scrum every day. Now that's pretty incredible, considering that 25 years ago it started out of necessity. Jeff invited Ken to help him in an organization in Burlington, Massachusetts, to build a medical device. They both sat down with the situation they were in and said, this isn't working, why? Ken went to DuPont and looked at the manufacturing processes that they were using. Jeff went to Harvard and talked to the Toyota people. They both came back with some very simple ideas. Empiricism, self-organization, this continuous focus on improvement. That then was wrapped with discipline, it was wrapped with values, it was wrapped with a focus on outcomes or the customer, and this sort of learning stuff, and that became Scrum. So simple as that, but it's being practiced all over the world every day. It's incredible. And yes, the majority of those people are in India, but according to our website anyway, or from Russia, which is another story. But it's amazing how it's changing the world. Some data there. So before we begin and talk about DevOps or talk about Agile or talk about any of those things, I want to set the scene. Because things are weird at the moment, aren't they? I think they're a little bit odd. I'm continuously surprised. And I'm going to highlight a few things that surprised me last year quite deeply. One was the American electoral system, in its infinite wisdom, which Fad and I spent a lot of time talking about last night. They voted for a gentleman called Donald Trump, the Trumpus. This bright orange gentleman that used to be on reality TV suddenly has become the president of America, which is really... Now, immaterial of your political beliefs, and if I was in America, I'd have to be very sensitive here if I was saying this, it was a surprise. I went to bed thinking, Hillary's going to win, it's going to be all right. I voted, but in Massachusetts that was kind of irrelevant, but I voted anyway. And I woke up in the morning and I found that Donald Trump was president of America. As a Brit that lives abroad, as an expat, I was shocked that England is going to blow up its foundations and move somewhere else. I was shocked with the Brexit vote. It was a complete surprise. I understand why both Donald Trump, well, I have an opinion why Donald Trump and Brexit happened, and a lot of it is to do with technology. A lot of it is to do with the changes that you guys are driving in your organizations. But the biggest surprise to me was neither of those two things. It was Leicester City Football Club, my hometown. I'm the only West boy not to be a season ticket holder at Leicester. And my dad says, why don't you just buy a season ticket anyway? I live in America, Dad. He goes, yeah, I'll be fine. Just we'll put a little picture of you on the seat. I was like, great, thanks. But they won the Premier League. How cool was that? Unfortunately, my father, used to put £10 on them finishing top 3 in the Premier League every year when they were in it. And then he retired, and his wife, Julie, my stepmom, said, you should really stop wasting this money. Turns out, 5,000 to 1, he would have made a lot of money. Yeah, he was a little surprised. And then in America, we have this sport. It's like cricket, but less interesting, and it's called baseball. And the Cubs won the World Series, blah, blah, blah. The point is, we live in unpredictable times. And this is an author I love particularly. I think he's one of the most interesting storytellers of our generation in terms of some of these changes. His name's Thomas Friedman. He's a New York Times columnist. Also writes for the Washington Post, lives in DC. And he wrote this book, Thank You for Being Late. And I'm just going to paraphrase 3 things that popped out. He talks about this massive age of change that we're in. He talks about the market, digital globalization. The fact, even if you drive a German car, it's very likely that the components in your car have been to more places than you've ever visited on holiday. You know, the fact that they're made in China, the fact they're made in Sri Lanka, I don't even know where that is, but I know, I really don't, I don't think. You know, the fact they're made in Myanmar or whatever, and then they're all brought together and they're assembled in the UK and then they're shipped to Germany to get put into a car. The bottom line is that the world is flat, right? We have to understand that. Globalization has changed the whole nature of the economies around the world. Climate change is, and I know that Donald Trump doesn't believe it, this is a hoax driven by China, or as he says, China. But climate change or population change is shaping the world. Every time you see a boat full of refugees, it's predominantly because of a combination of those factors. The world is changing in terms of its climate. You know, it snows in England. It never snowed when I was growing up. I was very annoyed that it snows now. I'd have loved a few snow days as a kid, but apparently that didn't happen. And the last one is Moore's Law. This isn't just about the classic Moore's Law, the microprocessor. It's about the cloud. It's about the fact that I have a website that is replicated all around the world. It runs on massive processors. Millions of people come to it, and it costs $1,200 a month. How incredible is that? I use AWS, we use Azure, we use all of this cloud infrastructure to really provide a powerful experience without spending very much money at all. Now, I was in Bristol yesterday, and they're building the first quantum computers. Interestingly, they're making it available in the cloud. Quantum computing available for anybody to use. It's incredible the world that we live in terms of technology. And this gentleman's called Perez. He talks about, really, he's an economist, and he talks about the changes in the world. And we're in this age now, this age of software and digital. Now, what's interesting, though, is the organizations you work in currently manage to the age of mass production and oil. That's how the hierarchies, the structures, it's about efficiency, it's about control, it's about all of this kind of like power structures that's very important if you're mass producing something. Very, very important if you live in a finite resource world. But we don't anymore. And as we go through this change, we're going to find some interesting challenges, both for society and for the way in which we work. And ultimately, I think Agile and DevOps and all the lean startup and all these things are really trying to wrestle with this as we pivot to use a lean startup. It's not a bottle fight. We're all right. It's okay. So as an Englishman, we just automatically jump up when you hear a bottle. Anyway, actually, as a Leicester City supporter, I would as well. Anyway, but what we're seeing is this change, this movement, as we pivot from the age of mass production to the age of digital and software. The age of mass production to the age of software. So ultimately, as you sit in organizations that are built for this, it's no wonder that they have some challenges. And we'll talk more about that in a minute and some of the things we can do to fix it. But everything that we do, everything that you're going to do over the next day today and maybe tomorrow if you're in the workshops, is about managing this pivot, managing this change, which is really, really interesting. So what does that mean, the age of software? You know, mass production is movement of capital and control, it has a certain style, efficiency, specialization of labor, management and management. There's this whole breed of people called managers that were invented in the age of mass production. Isn't that bizarre that we didn't have managers before then? We did have bosses. They were the rich guy with the hat, and mostly English, and they shouted at people in a regular fashion. This whole management hierarchy that we've put in place really came from this focus on control. You know, Jürgen Appelot, I can't say his surname, is going to be presenting this afternoon, I noticed. He talks about Management 3.0, and really what he's talking about is the change to management. And really, I think the whole thing, Management 3.0, is mislabeled because he's not talking about management. He's talking about something different. He's talking about stewardship, I think. And so it should be called Stewardship 1.0, not Management 3.0, in my opinion. But he doesn't listen to me, so fair enough. Maybe you can say it to him as well. And then the rise of the middle class was really based on this management layer. They really sort of came out of that. But in the age of software, you know, there's definitely a change in the way capital is being managed and the way in which control is being exerted. Currently, certain organizations have unfair amounts of control, Facebook being one of them. Some would argue the reason why Donald Trump won is because the people that he was associated with used Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, etc., in a very inappropriate way, driving fake news in a model that actually didn't necessarily make people vote for Donald Trump, but made them not vote for Hillary Clinton. That's really worrying that control is being exerted by a bunch of, you know, sort of like software guys, data scientists. I never really trust data scientists, you know. Maybe because they're too smart. Maybe they did German instead of French. I don't know. But the point is that this control's changed. Innovation and opportunity. We live in a land of innovation opportunity. Cross-functional teams as opposed to specialization of labor. Self-organization and decentralization is very much, if you go to Google, they have relatively small groups of people working on things. You know, the reason why they restructured around Alphabet, very different kind of structural model. And in a different book by Thomas Friedman, he talks about the rise of the creator. He believes there's going to be 3 classes in the future. He believes there's going to be creators, people that create stuff, build cars, build health systems, build Fitbits, build watches, I don't know. There's going to be people helping them, enablers, building processes and systems and tools for them. And then there's going to be servers. And the server class is going to reduce every year because technology is going to replace them. You know, I go to a Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru in Boston that's fully computerized now. I literally order it, but normally, like I talk to somebody, it's not somebody, it's actually a bot. And then when I get to the little thingy, it just opens and donuts and coffee pop out. And no human being involved in that transaction. Well, there might be somebody right at the back, probably, you know, doing something, but it's just incredible that we live in this age where the creator is becoming the most important single thing. So that's really the context that we live in, because it drives us to this need for business agility. So it isn't about Scrum as such, it isn't about DevOps as such, it isn't about any of those things. Instead, it's about business agility, the ability for organizations to respond to a very changing environment. And that's hard. We'll talk about why it's so hard in a moment. But we live in a land of opportunity. You know, we've got this, opportunity is everywhere. Big data, cloud, robots, RFID, 5G, new materials, automation, 3D nanotech, gene tech, blockchain, source code, globalization. You know, blockchain is going to fundamentally destroy the financial services sector. It's going to change it fundamentally. We know that. We just don't know how, we don't know when, and we don't know what. But we know that there's going to be a huge change when you have basically open ledger models, particularly as millennials don't trust banking the way that us oldies do. It's a different kind of perspective that they have. The fact that things like Starbucks cards have more money on them than the entire economy of Luxembourg, probably. I have no idea if that's true. I'm not totally sure if Luxembourg has an economy. I don't know. I don't even totally know where it is, though. Is it sort of, anyway, probably near Sri Lanka. Anyway, so unfortunately, that's how England had an empire. Where are these countries? I don't know. Put a flag in it, make them drink gin and tonic, give them cricket, everything will be great. If America could learn that, yeah. Anyway, so bit of politics, moving swiftly on. Globalization, AI it's going to happen. It is everything, all of this technology is coming together, and it's no longer a exponential curve. It's a series of these exponential S-curves overlaying on top of each other. It isn't what you can do, it's how you're going to do it, because there's all these different ways of building technology today. And then, of course, how we engage with customers. Generation N, whether it's Generation X, Generation Z, Generation Y, millennials, work very differently to us. They behave differently. We've got digital natives today, people that naturally use phones. It's interesting, and Scrum.org, we have a significant amount of people coming to our website. And I've noticed a pivot in the last year, so more people are coming mobile than ever before. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I also noticed that the only browsers are basically Chrome, or they are the native browsers on iPhones. That seems to be the only ones that people come in on. Which is just interesting, we're seeing that pivot. Business models, climate change, all these things are changing how customers. So opportunity is everywhere. We live in an opportunity-rich environment. But everything is not an opportunity. So as a product owner, I have this magic dashboard, the magic product box, where I can change business models, I can change channels, I can change architecture, I can change features, I can change customers, selling to different customers, etc. I can change the user experience, and I can wiggle all these diagrams, all these knobs. And what I find is ultimately, then I'm looking at the context of my product in terms of how much it costs, the value that I'm getting back from it, the value that I seek from it, the timing, because value and time are intrinsically linked now. Sometimes being first to market is the most important thing. And then I live in this constrained environment, whether it's regulation, whether it's the history, the experience. In my case, I have a strong legacy of Scrum and a community that's got a very strong opinion of what we are and what we're not. And a different opinion. So when I deliver new stuff, I have to consider that. So I'm balancing all of this stuff as a product owner, which is really hard, which means that we live in this world, right? Whether you use the Ralph Stacey graph, which he no longer wants us to talk about, so I'm not going to inspired by rather than it's based on, or you use Cynefin and that model to think about complexity. The bottom line is we live in a complex world. A complex world. Now, complexity is a challenge, but we know how to fix it. We've done it. We know how to fix complexity. We know exactly. We use a model like this. It's called probe, sense, respond, or also known as inspect, adapt. And we involve the right people. We have a communication model to involve the right people. We use customers and we learn from them. We inspect them. We deliver continuously to them, get feedback, which we then as a team understand and provide information to our stakeholders to make the right choices about which knobs we're pressing, etc. What capital we need to deploy, etc. We live in this inspect and adapt loop. That's how you deal with complexity. That's how you deal with it. And guess what? Scrum is built for that, right? We know that. This is all Scrum is. It manages this loop in an effective way. It provides us opportunities to inspect and adapt. It provides us with mechanisms to make things transparent via the artifacts. It provides us with roles who are focused on it. It provides us with a physical thing to deliver to get data back called an increment. It provides us with the ability to step back and to be mindful about it with retrospective and sprint review. It's just based on that. It's as simple as that. Hang on a minute, but the reality isn't that. So when I was a researcher at Forrester Research, I talked to a lot of organizations that were doing Scrum. Scrum has become the most popular process during my time at Forrester. And I asked them, are they doing Scrum? They said, yeah, we're doing Scrum. We do a daily stand-up. And I was like, that's a bit dodgy, but fair enough. I respect them that they're calling it an incorrect thing, but fair, it's moving on. Hang on. So the reason why I don't call it a stand-up is for two reasons. One, what happens if you can't stand up? You know? I mean, that's just rude. Secondly, it's not about what you're physically doing, it's about why you're there. The reason why it's called a scrum. Now, I don't know how many of you play rugby. Looks like some of you do. Actually, it looks like none of you do. I don't think Germany has a rugby team, does it? It probably has no. Anyway, but I was going to make a joke about football then, but I'm not really going to. Just going to say England 2-1, just saying, just for the record. I know we'll meet you in the semi-finals, it'll end up in penalties, you'll beat us, but we're doing well now, eh? Yeah, okay, efficiency, quality, we don't need any of that. Anyway, so the reason why we call it a daily scrum, the reason why it's a scrum. So in rugby, what happens when you do a scrum in rugby? You do a scrum in rugby when the ball stops moving, right? Because of an infringement, because somebody's died on it, because you've lost it in a sea of mud, which was my school days, and you start again. Whoever had the ball when it got lost puts it into the scrum, you reform and you start again. That's what a daily scrum is. You form. The ball is work, outcomes, the sprint goal, what you're trying to achieve. You look at that work, you go, how can we start moving this again? How do we move it faster? What's stopping us from moving it? That's why it's called a daily scrum. Not because you're standing up. Not because it's 15 minutes, though that's obviously the ideal time. It's because you're forming and moving the ball, as it were. Sorry, but that's the reason why. Anyway, so I talked to all these organizations, slight aside now back, when I was an analyst. And they said, we're doing Scrum, we're doing our dailies, we're doing sprints, we're doing all of this stuff. I was like, oh, goody. I said, so you release software frequently? Oh, hang on. No, we don't release software very often. Well, because our customers don't want it. It's painful, it's difficult. Has anybody rolled out an SAP application? It can kill people. I mean, talk about, there's lots of stuff going on. All right, okay. And, okay, so you plan frequently and you oh, no. We only plan once a year. Okay. But we're doing Scrum. So I coined the phrase water scrum full that described this sort of scrums happening in a waterfall environment, which is, yeah, I mean, not ideal. And it's not surprising, though. Look at the mess that we're in. You know, you got things like ITIL. Wow. Releasing software seems to be an act of God. I don't know about anything else. It's like this complex process. And then you got the PMI and their project management funding models, which I would only want to run once a year, and then I'd want to be on vacation during that time. I mean, it looks awful. It looks absolutely awful. And we live in an environment that's anti-transparency. Which is interesting, because remember, inspection and adaptation, this idea of working in a complex environment, the most important single thing to work in a complex environment is to know what the hell's going on. It's called transparency, right? You visualize stuff. You use techniques like Kanban. You make things visible by using test-driven development where things fail all the time. You make things very tangible. You make them very in your face. You talk about them lots. You visualize them lots. You smell them lots. But that's hard in most organizations. Why is that? Well, the culture of mass production isn't built around this because you've got a boss that tells you what to do, a boss that incentivizes you on that and then will promote you if you do what he or she says. We live in an environment where your pay raise or your bonus is based on your boss seeing that you're doing all right. So the last thing you want to do is tell them anything. The last thing you want to do is be transparent, unless it's good news, which we know in software it never is. The last thing we want to do is admit we don't know something When I was the RUP product manager, yes, I was the RUP product manager working for a gentleman called Dean Leffingwell. It's good to see RUPs back. Sorry, no, that was a slide, nasty Bob. Ignore that. What was interesting is I was on a weekly release cadence call. So we had Rational Suite. It was RUP, it was ClearCase, it was Rose RT, it was Soda, it was all these different tools. And we had a weekly release meeting where we talked about status. This is how it went every week, particularly at the early stages of release. Everybody was like, green, 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 green. Everything's green, great, everything's going well. And then things started happening. Things went wrong, but we never told them in the status meeting. No, it was like, yeah, we're a little bit amber now, but we're all right. Yeah, amber, but we're all right. We're going to be fine. We just have to do some stuff. And we were waiting for that one team you know, like that Russian roulette where you don't, we waited for that one team to say, I'm going to be late because, as soon as they said then, every other team just rolled in on them. Oh yeah, well if he's going to be late, he was late. I'm going to be late because I'm going to do all these things. Because of him, he was late. Did I mention it was him? So suddenly you get this very untransparent culture. It's hard when you're scared of your customer. It's hard when you're scared of your boss. It's hard when you're scared of your position and your authority to be transparent. The age of mass production doesn't lend itself to this model of being transparent. And of course, releasing software, it's not just about transparency, it's the fact that you're working in an environment that's evolved to a level of complexity and pain that's almost impossible. Legacy, cultural norms, silos, management traditions, finance, market pressures. What we have seen over and over again is this maniac. GE is a great. So GE was dropped, wasn't it, from the FTSE, from the S&P, the 500, the best companies in America, and it was dropped. And predominantly because they weren't delivering on shareholder value. Jeff Immelt was probably one of the most aggressive, agile proponents in the world. As a CEO, he transformed their organization. He transformed their jet engine business into an information business. He started driving the idea that they were ultimately a software company. Throughout, he was building communities of practice. He was driving Scrum, big user of Scrum, into every part of his organization. He was using a life cycle not of work, but of understanding to drive the acquisition and the development of products. He was fired. Why was he fired? Primarily because he wasn't delivering the returns that the shareholders wanted. I mean, let's be honest, he navigated this company through some of the most traumatic times. He bought, just before he joined, they bought a nuclear power company, a huge nuclear power, I think a German one actually, organization that built nuclear reactors. And then we had Japan. Great. He had a large financial business that went through the recession, the financial recession. But he got fired because he wasn't delivering shareholder value. It was interesting. If you ever want an amusing, fabulous afternoon, maybe it's a Friday afternoon, maybe you've had a few beers at lunch, listen to the earnings calls of Tesla. So it goes like this. Elon Musk and his team of managers are on the call. All of these analysts from like Morgan Stanley, JP this, all these like institutional investment organizations are on the call, and they ask him loads and loads of questions. And Elon Musk, who's very much aware of building complexity and managing to this modern world, talks about what they're doing. And you hear him getting more and more frustrated with these people. And last earnings call, he just said, I ain't taking any more of these questions. Can we have until an interesting question comes and I'll answer it. Have we got any interesting questions? And they got really grumpy because you can't do that. But I remember one of the calls that was really, really funny. They said, this analyst said, Elon, you keep releasing software to the car over and over again. Can't you just get it right? And he said, no. the more we release, the more we learn. The more we learn, the better our product. The better our product, the more valuable it is. The more valuable it is, the better you guys get from it. No, you need to release continuously. This guy said, yeah, but it's really annoying. What an idiot. But that is the world we live in. That is the world we live in. And Elon perhaps isn't a great ambassador for the story that we're showing, because he just gets very grumpy with these people and tells them they're a bunch of idiots. Maybe there's a better way of dealing with them. I don't know. So we know we have to do Agile. Well, Agile at the broadest level, not necessarily Scrum, not necessarily any of the particular thing, but we know we need to transform our business to work in this age of accelerations. We know that Agile isn't really working in these organizations today because of the challenges that we live in. And then DevOps came along. Now, interestingly, DevOps, which is, I'm a big fan of DevOps. DevOps has always been in Scrum. DevOps, the first book was written by Mike Beadle, God rest his soul, and Ken, and they, XP and Scrum, and they talked about delivering software continuously for it. They had the concept of definition of done. They had this idea. So DevOps, in my opinion, is always, so I was always very confused when people was like, oh no, it's Scrum or DevOps. No, they're the same thing. They work together. And what's interesting is that we believe, because we believe in empiricism, that you release frequently. In fact, the best sprint reviews are reviews of working software in production. Isn't that the best? Why? Because you're getting real data. Why? Because you're learning stuff that your customers, if they're not using it, that's learning something, right? We released it yesterday, nobody's using it. Why is that? Because it's a holiday. Oh, well, fair enough. Or, oh, because people they keep using it wrong. We've got more support calls. Oh, things that you didn't expect. It's brilliant. The other thing that's really interesting, that often people get wrong about Scrum, and I can't believe people get wrong. Probably no Germans get it wrong, but everybody else gets it wrong. They believe that the life cycle of Scrum is a release life cycle, that the sprint review is a phase gate for releasing to production. It's not. This isn't a release life cycle. This is a planning life cycle, if anything. It's about inspection and adaptation through transparency. It's about visualizing the problem that you're getting. We believe in inspecting frequently. So I've always thought that Scrum and DevOps were linked. And in fact, if you look at the history of DevOps, DevOps came from Agile, right? We get that, right? It came from these gentlemen. I believe they're from Belgium. And they met up and they wanted to talk about Agile infrastructure, which led to DevOps Days, which began in Belgium in 2009, which led to the work that everybody's seeing. Now, so it's not about Scrum, it's not about DevOps, it's about how these things can work together more effectively. That's what we have to think about. And really, what I really like about what we're getting from the DevOps community is this. It's solving the Scrum fall problem. Very focused on solving this problem. And it's taking those approaches that we think just, well, of course you'd do that. Those Agile techniques and applying it to infrastructure and release management. It's highlighting the value of continuous integration, not just at the dev team level, the traditional code team level, but more broadly. It's driving a culture of continuous delivery into the enterprise. Scrum needs this to be successful. This is how you stop Scrum from being, as Martin Fowler would say, flaccid. This is how you harden up your Scrum. If you can solve Scrum fall, you're in a much better position. Yeah, your funding processes are completely broken and you're going to have to lie on your timesheet every week. But bottom line is, if you can solve this, you can get data back into the process and you can start learning more fast. God, that's awful English. Faster. You can actually start doing things better. But that's actually hard. Now, obviously, in the Agile community and the Scrum community, we've realized it's hard a long time. Now, the DevOps community are realizing it's also really hard, which is great. Operations are focused on stability and total cost of ownership, right? There's a lot of moving parts. Did you know? So 2 weeks ago, I was in Stanford visiting Stephen Blank, and I was very, very fortunate to attend the Hacking for Defense MBA presentations. And I realized as I was sitting there, they were talking about, one of the projects was about trying to fix the problem of battleships going off course. There was the example recently where in the China Sea, I think it was, a battleship, a US battleship, managed to sink itself because the navigation system went wrong. And this presentation highlighted the fact that a battleship has over 200,000 discrete systems, and they never integration test them. It's a bit of a worry, isn't it? So, now I'm paraphrasing, this is not what they said, but imagine you're sailing down the middle of the night, you're doing 48 knots, it's a high-speed, amazing battleship, you've got cruise missiles, nuclear cruise missiles on your ship, you're whizzing along, you decide to do to turn. Somebody switches on your microwave to get a burrito, because you always need a burrito in the middle of the night, particularly when you're sailing. The microwave interferes with the navigation system. The navigation system instantly moves you all left, like 100 yards. Suddenly, you've got this multi-billion-dollar battleship flying at 40-odd knots, and it hits a rock because somebody switched the microwave on. Integration testing is really, really important. But can you imagine how hard it is for a battleship? How would you do it? So guys, don't worry, I've just released a new patch to that defect. Can we all get on the boat and go out for a day? And I want to launch a couple of those cruise missiles. It's really hard. But IT systems aren't that far behind. Look at a bank. Those systems have evolved to a level of complexity that only like a guy with a really big head can understand. It's really, really difficult. Budget, service levels, all this kind of stuff gets in the way of delivering value. It gets in the way of solving these problems. And then you've got help desk, security, and security. Everybody's into security. Cybersecurity is like the number one thing, really important, but it gets in the way of doing that. And so DevOps have tried to respond with something more holistic. They've tried to respond with this idea of, well, we've got these values now, culture, automation, lean, measurement, sharing, because they've realized how damn hard it is. So they've gone from just talking about deployment and agile infrastructure to something like, well, you have to actually change quite systematically. And Jez and Nicole have written this really interesting, Jez and Patrick and John have written this. Jez is working with Nicole quite a lot. And they've said, oh, this is the process, this is the model that you need. Because they've realized that nobody can fix this problem, so they call it leadership and culture now, which is always a good way of saying, well, I don't really understand how to fix it, but you need to change your culture. Anyway, and they've highlighted things, well, there's no agile in that though, which is really, really worrying. Well, I actually think that agile is everywhere, with a few changes. I don't believe it's individual recognition. I think it's team recognition that becomes important. And I believe that you see agile everywhere around this, but also you can take some ideas out of this. They say tomato, we say tomato. I mean, really, that's what's happening here. They're using different words to describe all the things we've already been doing. So let's not worry about the words anymore. Let's drive away from it. So it's not agile, or DevOps. It's about driving change. So how do we do that? The age of software requires an empirical process based on customer outcomes. Yeah, of course, they could be internal customers. They could be, it doesn't really matter. Somebody you're delivering value to. Team-based self-organization with a focus on learning. Continuous change and improvement because we don't know the problem we're trying to solve. And when we do know it, it's probably changed. And now we need to do that at scale. I can do this easily at single team. So before Scrum.org, I worked for a startup. When I joined, we were about 10, 12 people, and we grew to over 100. We got funding, $12.5 million, which was fabulous. We had a great party. And when you get funding, the first thing you do is spend $1 million on a website. And we did that and had a great party to celebrate. But what I realized quite quickly as we grew, it was really easy to be agile when we were one development team, when we were basically 3 salespeople and everybody was selling, when we were all doing everything. It was very easy because we looked at the backlog continuously and we said, oh my God, we've got to do a presentation for this conference. I'm actually really busy. Can somebody else do it? Somebody else said, yeah, I'll do it. Okay, oh, we need to do some testing on the product. You know, I'd be testing 1 minute, the CEO would be testing, would be deploying, everybody was doing everything. As we grew, it became harder. At scale, these problems become harder. So we have to do some broader things. We have to think about a broader value stream. We need to look at the constraints that we're in and engage them in a more effective way. And then we need to manage the reality of skills. Unfortunately, it means compromise is necessary. Compromise is necessary. Scrum has already demonstrated compromise. We already have that compromise. For instance, a great example of compromise is the Scrum Master, maybe. Ultimately, in a perfect world, you wouldn't need Scrum Master because everybody would be responsible for driving Scrum and for making things visible and delivering value and making things flow, and you would, as a team, do it. But we compromise because we realize that the team can't do that. They need somebody to help them do that, an individual to drive that, which was called the Scrum Master. Compromise is necessary, but not mandatory. You don't have to start with the compromises. You need to push against those compromises. So let's talk about a definition of done. I believe that Fad's going to do a fabulous presentation on, actually I don't know if it's fabulous, but I'm sure it is, on definition of done later. But one very important holistic view. So if you start using systems thinking to scale your way of thinking about delivering value, you have to start thinking about the definition of done in a more holistic way. Instead of just thinking about it in your world, the world of your team, the world of software that you're working to, you need to think about it much broader than that. Code, test, integrate often is the level of definition of done in most organizations. Maybe test after that, so different levels of test, obviously. Deploy, maybe. Use, my God, we're starting to think about the use in your definition of done, monitoring people using it, being available for issues when they come in, you know, etc. And then report, so the telemetry and instrumentation. You need to start thinking about that broad definition of done as it applies to the products that you're delivering. But what's pushing back on that always is dependencies, skills, legacy systems, regulations. Because of course you have to separate, different people have to be involved here in the testing because of FDA or whatever. You have to separate, because of legacy you can't actually do that level of testing because you need access to another system. But ultimately, as you do that, you will be breaking your ability to be agile. So you have to balance the value that you're going to get out from delivering the further down this line of definition of done with the cost and the challenge inside your own organization. You have to manage to those constraints in an effective way. And then there are ways of creating a larger scale empirical process. This is something called Nexus. Awesome book came out in December that you might want to read. I don't know. Actually, I don't mind if you don't read it, just buy it. The Nexus talks about how you can actually scale multiple Scrum teams working on the same product. What's interesting about Nexus is that we learned a few things that I'm going to share with you now. When we started, we came very late to the scaling world and the scaling challenges at scrum.org. Well, I would argue we didn't, but until we had a pretty picture, a lot of organizations thought we came quite late to it. So the first thing that we did wasn't build a framework and see. The first thing wasn't to create a presentation. It was actually to talk to lots of organizations, and we found some very interesting things. We found that over a certain size, agility breaks down. It was about 10, 12 teams. When it was 15, 16 teams, it started to break down. So we found that the same laws of team size apply at the small and the large. No surprise there, really. Not a big surprise. Dependencies were the biggest thing that got in the way of agility. We found that organizations that effectively managed dependencies, made them transparent, and aggressively killed them were more likely to be agile. No surprise, trunk-based development was really good. Continuous integration reduces complexity. Now, it's hard, and a lot of teams spent time getting to it, but ultimately, continuous integration reduces complexity, but often requires external people from operations, support, from infrastructure to come and help do it. Most teams can't do it on their own, and most teams of teams certainly can't. Product ownership is really bloody hard at scale. Why? It's like having 4 or 5. I consider product ownership a bit like parenting. Not in terms of how you do it, but in terms of the feeling that you get. Whenever you think everything's going fine, it's not. It's like having multiple toddlers running around and you're picking them up and bringing them back, picking them up and bringing them back. The larger the situation, the more toddlers are involved. When I go and see I have a 5.5-year-old, and I go to pre-K with him, and I sit in the room to do story time or something, I have no idea how teachers deal with it. Because these kids are continuously, bright object, bright object, bright object. So as you scale as a product owner, that's what it feels a bit like. So instead of being able to do everything, like write the stories and be in every meeting about the product, you have to start delegating, you have to start leading, you have to start providing guardrails, which is really, really hard. The other thing that we saw over and over again is as you grow, waste grows in, cost. You end up saying the same thing over and over again, which is expensive. You end up having to have more meetings. You end up having to maintain, you have to increase your discipline to make sure that things are updated always. Now, what we found was that teams did a good job when they were effective of balancing their own need to be agile and speed and rapid feedback with the needs of the whole. But they were continuously balancing. So we saw velocity changing frequently based on not their own needs, but also the whole, as it were, which was kind of interesting. But we proved that it can work to a size, which was good. But Nexus isn't enough to do Agile at scale. Nexus isn't enough to scale it across the enterprise. You have to start thinking about some other things. And this is what we've learned from DevOps, we've learned from Scrum. And there's 2 big things that I think is really, really important as we move into the age of software. Alignment to products. Organizations that have teams, and we learned this in Less as well, that teams that are aligned to customer outcomes and products, that had a clear knowledge of who their customer was, are much more effective than teams that aren't. It cuts through the bullshit, and I'm going to swear then on purpose. I apologize if it offended you, but it cuts through it because you know your customer, you know what you're trying to achieve, you've got to focus. You're not just a cog in a system. The other thing that's really interesting, and we learnt this from Spotify. Watch it. Spotify. Little tip. If you're ever in a bar fight and you're going to use a bottle, do not break it like that, because you get glass in your face. Break it under the table, because then the glass breaks down on the floor, you're totally fine, and you're coming up ready to do him. That's if you only learn one thing today. That's what Leicester teaches me. Who says you don't learn anything in Leicester? Anyway, back to the real story. So, work and talent management need to be separate. People management also. This idea that you work for a boss and they're involved with the work every day, and that boss is not only responsible for developing you, but also responsible for the work that you are delivering, is wrong. You need to separate those two things. Spotify did this nicely. Google does this nicely. It's a lot more effective. You need to separate talent development. And that needs to be by peers. You need to build a community of master, apprentice, journeyman kind of stuff. People whose job is to help others, not just themselves. Individual contributors, you promote people for their ability to help others and to make them better. Individual contribution is important, obviously, but in the context of shared group learning and the like. And so really what management concentrates on building and maintaining an environment for ability to thrive, they basically create this idea, this environment of skills and people. The thing that I've seen over and over again is the only way to scale agility, to do DevOps effectively, is to invest in the people. There's no magic process. There's no magic tool. It's about people, it's about skills, and it's about individuals helping each other. And obviously, when we start thinking about people and skills, we start thinking about things like this. This idea that everybody has a broad, if you align to customers and you align to customer outcomes, you build a broad set of knowledge around that. So you build people that get that. You then help them develop these specialist skills, ideally in one area, and then over time in multiple areas, and you build out these very agile skill sets. Interestingly, when you look at companies like Amazon and how they got to agile, it wasn't intentional. It was because they're cheap. Most organizations, if you're a large bank, if you need another set of skills, you hire somebody. Not Amazon. We're cheap. We don't do that. You have to buy your own coffee at Amazon. You have to pay your own parking. We don't even have bean bags. You know, like all these trendy offices have bean bags everywhere. No fuzzball tables, plastic chairs. What they did, and they forced people to, hey, will you get on, Stack Overflow, you'll be fine, just, Bottom line is they ended up building very agile teams because of that. They have a maniacal focus on the customer, and they have this leanness that's almost insane, so they end up with this cone shape. By accident, not on purpose, which is cool. The other thing that's really, really important is community. I talked about the separation of talent management from work management. Obviously, work management is the responsibility of the team, ultimately. Talent management, though, needs to be the responsibility of the community. You need to start building communities around skills. So imagine front-end Java developers, I don't think you do that anymore, but Java developers, or maybe it's data specialists, or business analysts, or testers, or you start building out these communities, but you don't just build them as hey, every month we'll buy pizza, because that's nice. I mean, we all like pizza, don't we? But instead, you give them teeth. You make them responsible for talent acquisition. So they hire people. You make them responsible for growth. You measure them in terms of things like attrition. You measure them in terms of business value. You measure them in terms of employee satisfaction. You start building out skills plans, and you invest in an apprentice, journeyman, master kind of model. And you make the communities responsible for that. We're seeing some very interesting work done by Agile HR, and they're really starting to think about this in a more effective way. And I've got a little story. When I was working at TaskTop as this startup, I had a developer who worked for me called David Green. And I know this is being recorded, so if you're watching Dave, I'm going to say something really flattering now. David Green was probably one of the best developers I've ever worked with in my life. And I've worked with some bloody smart people. But he could write code like nothing on earth. He did not have fingers. He had some sort of direct interface apprentice. I mean, literally, he's an amazing developer. And he couldn't just write code. He architected code well in his head. He was just amazing. He's an amazing guy and an amazing developer. But ultimately, one of the biggest challenges that we had with David Green was the fact that he was committing a significant percentage of the commits, right? And we had 50 developers around him who weren't. Now, that sounds like, well, is that a problem? Well, yeah, because David Green used to ride a bike every day. David Green could have been knocked over by a bus. David Green could decide to leave. Also, we're not very agile. We can't respond quickly. If David Green's doing something, we can't do other things. So we looked at how you can transfer skills. And one of the biggest challenges that we had was trying to get him to help others, because naturally he wanted to, he's a really good person, but he found it challenging to do that. So what did I do? Switched off his GitHub privileges. Yeah, that reduced his commits. Yeah, it didn't work, but that's not the point. The idea was that the way that he would help is through others, that he would tell them how to do stuff. They would learn it, they'd get better. His job was to create a bunch of journeymen to master. His job wasn't to commit anymore. I had to put it back on because obviously productivity dropped to 0 and we were in a right crisis, and my boss was like, what the hell are you doing? But the idea was a good one, I think. Okay, maybe you don't need to be as extreme as that, but ultimately that's what you have to do. You have to build community around that. So, what does this all mean? I haven't talked much about DevOps, have I? I haven't talked much about Scrum. Because I don't think that's important. I don't think any of that is important. I think really what we're focused on is not about Agile versus DevOps. Certainly not about a new thing called Scrum Ops. It's about building an Agile organization. And that basically means something very simple. It means we need to adopt empirical process. It means we need self-organization. It means we need continuous improvement in the context of values to allow transparency to happen effectively. In the context of discipline, because as you scale, you need to be more disciplined. You need to put notes in your JIRA issues. You need to be consistently appropriate with your testing models and your harnesses that you use. You need to be more disciplined about how you build. You need to be focused on the customer, because at the end of the day, if you know who your customer is, it reduces the debate, or it at least focuses that debate in an effective way. And you need to be continuously learning so that mastery is your purpose. If you do that, you're going to be building an agile organization. And that's hard to scale. So you need to put in place this orientation to products. You need to separate talent and work management, and you need to continuously push your definition of done to make it broader to improve your learning while managing the constraints that your organization imposes on you. Definition of done is actually really important. Accept compromise, because you'll have to if you want to survive in life. And I mean, we've legalized marijuana in Massachusetts, so obviously compromise is much easier now. Wow, nobody laughed. That's obviously either very true or... but don't assume it is the right... Do not mandate compromise. Organizations often mandate compromise. Yeah, well, I know we want to be agile, but in this situation... No. Accept it, that it's a reality, but don't mandate it. Strive for perfection. Strive for doing it right. And remember, and this is the interesting thing, a slight story here. SpaceX, right? Everybody's into the Falcon, rocket series, and another Elon Musk. He's kind of my hero, really. But SpaceX. How many software engineers are involved with the Falcon X rocket? 50. Damn it. You meant to say like 500, but good. 38. 38. And you're telling me you can't build a blooming insurance system with 500? 38. The best thing to do often in most situations is descale, not scale. And then DevOps and Agile just becomes natural. Size is not everything. But that's not true in rugby, where I remember I was 14 and we played a tour in Wales. And I remember going onto the field, and the Welsh guys had full beards. I was 14. I could not grow a beard. I had no body hair. And I remember then, they killed us. So rugby size is very important. Scrum, not so. Agile, not so. So that's what I wanted to share with you. We live in an age of accelerations. We live in an age of change, an age of opportunity. Software is the most important commodity in the 21st century. We live in the age of software, but that means complexity is increased exponentially. From opportunity comes challenges. We have to build organizations that can navigate in this world. DevOps and Agile are ultimately techniques and approaches to help us to do that. We need to build Agile enterprises to respond to uncertainty and change. Now, remember that your organizations that many of you work in, not all, but many of you, were built for the age of mass production, the age of management, the age of hierarchies, the age of control, de-risk, slow decision-making processes because, things don't change much. And getting things wrong is much more of an impact than getting things right quickly. Ultimately, that means you have to somehow deliver this empirical process and self-organization and a continuous process of improvement in the context of that. That does require some compromise. But if you concentrate on those very simple things, definition of done, you concentrate on orienting to a customer, you concentrate on separation of work management from people management, you can start building a community of people that understand this and drive change into the enterprise. I think we can do it. I know we're going to do it. Because if we don't, there's so many things that we're not going to have the opportunity to do. I believe if we do this right, we can change the world every day. So I'm really excited to be part of this journey. That's what I wanted to talk about. That's my son and I wearing our Leicester City shirts on the way to five-a-side football when nobody knows who Leicester City is. And if you'd like to carry on this conversation or share any anecdotes, please tweet me, email me, or of course you can always find me at scrum.org. Thank you for your attention, and that's it. Thanks. Do we have time for questions?